There's a specific shift that happens in a solo business, usually somewhere between year 1 and year 3, where the work starts feeling harder without anything obviously changing. Not harder emotionally, harder operationally. Decisions take longer than they used to. Ideas feel thinner than they should. You're doing the same things, with more experience behind you, and somehow getting less return on both. Most solopreneurs who feel this assume it's a motivation problem, or a systems problem, or a discipline problem they haven't solved yet. Here's what it actually is most of the time. It's an isolation problem, and it shows up in 5 very specific ways in the business itself. Not just in how you feel, but in what you produce, how you decide, and how you relate to the people you work with. That's what this is about. The first sign is this: your decisions take longer than they used to, and when you finally make them, you don't feel more confident, you feel more alone. Here's what most people get wrong about this pattern. They assume taking longer means thinking more carefully. It doesn't. It usually means the opposite. Here's the specific thing that happens. When you make decisions without any external input, your working assumptions never get challenged, which means they never get sharpened. You run the same frameworks, return to the same reference points, and the thinking circles rather than advances. Research on decision quality in isolated versus collaborative conditions consistently shows that the problem isn't depth of analysis, it's calibration. An external perspective, even a single honest one, doesn't just add information. It stress tests the assumptions the information is sitting on. Without that, you can think longer and harder and still arrive somewhere worse. That's not a personal observation. That's structural. The decisions aren't taking longer because you've gotten less capable. They're taking longer because you're running a calibration process that was never designed to be a solo operation. And the specific feeling of being more alone after the decision, not less, is the signal that something external is missing from the process. The second sign runs a little quieter, but it's just as important. The ideas aren't as good as they used to be, not in an obvious way. They're still functional, still competent. But if you're honest, and most solo operators who've been at this long enough are, there's a narrowness to them that wasn't there before. A gravitational pull toward the familiar, the safe version, the proven version, the one you already know works. Here's the mechanism behind this, because it matters to understand it precisely. Creativity, real creative output, not just idea generation, is a social process at its core. Not because you need someone to generate with you, but because the friction of an external perspective is what pushes an idea past its first draft. When someone pushes back on an idea, you're forced to defend it, refine it, or abandon it. That process, the friction, is what separates ideas that work from ideas that merely feel comfortable. Without it, thinking calcifies, not suddenly, gradually. You stop exploring the edges of the problem because there's no one to catch you if you go too far, and no one to tell you you're not going far enough. The data on how isolation affects creative output is actually striking. Studies on distributed cognition, how thinking works across people rather than inside them, suggest that the quality of individual creative output is meaningfully tied to the regularity of external intellectual friction. Remove the friction long enough, and the output doesn't just plateau. It contracts toward the center. What high-functioning solo operators actually do is build deliberate friction into their process, not because they lack confidence in their ideas, but because they understand that confidence and quality are two different things. The third sign tends to sneak up the slowest. It's strategic drift. This is the pattern where the business is technically moving. Revenue is coming in, projects are being delivered, but the direction has quietly detached from the original intention. Here's what causes it. Strategy, real strategic thinking, requires a surface to test itself against. When you're operating alone, the only surface available is your own prior thinking, which means the strategy gets tested against the assumptions that produced it. That's not a test, that's confirmation. Over time, what looks like strategic decision-making is actually a pattern of self-reinforcing choices that have drifted from the original problem without anyone pointing out that the drift has happened. That's not a personal observation, that's structural. And the longer you've been operating solo, the more likely it is that some version of this has happened without your being able to detect it from inside. Sign number 4 sits right next to it. Client and stakeholder relationships that have started to feel managed rather than genuinely responsive. This one's subtle. You're not doing anything wrong in the relationship. You're professional, reliable, communicative, but there's a quality of authentic responsiveness that has quietly dropped out of the interactions, replaced by a kind of competent management that works but doesn't build. Here's the specific thing that happens. When you don't have anyone in your professional life who pushes back on your thinking about people, your relational models get as stuck as your strategic ones. The same patterns keep running. The same assumptions keep operating. And the client relationship starts to feel like a system you're managing rather than a person you're actually reading. Signs 3 and 4 are the same structure showing up in two different parts of the business. Strategic drift is what happens when your thinking has no surface to test itself against. Relational drift is what happens when the same thing occurs in how you understand the people you work with. They compound. And when they compound, the business doesn't fail dramatically, it just quietly underperforms what it was originally capable of. If what's been described so far is landing, if one or more of these signs is already familiar, there's a resource in the description built specifically for this moment. It's called the Solo Operator's Thinking Kit. It's a portable decision-making framework designed to pressure test your choices when there's no one to do it with you. Structured prompts, decision trees, the same friction that a thinking partner would provide, built for a single operator working alone. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. The fifth sign is this. Your plans are technically sound, and they keep not working the way you expected. Not failing, just not landing. The logic holds. The execution is disciplined. But somewhere between the plan and the outcome, something expected didn't happen. And you're not quite sure where the gap was. Here's the mechanism. Planning in isolation produces plans that are internally coherent. Every assumption connects to the next. The logic is watertight, inside the system that produced it. But a plan that's never been stress-tested from outside almost always has a load-bearing assumption that the planner couldn't see because the planner is too close to it. That's not overthinking, that's physics. You can't see your own blind spots. Neither can anyone operating without external input. The plans keep not landing, not because the planning is bad, but because the testing surface was missing. Now here's what's important to understand about all 5 of these signs together. They don't operate independently, they compound. Slower decisions reduce your strategic agility. Narrower creative output reduces your competitive differentiation. Strategic drift reduces your ability to course correct. Relational autopilot reduces the quality of the feedback you receive from clients. And plans that don't land reduce your confidence in the planning process itself, which makes the next decision take even longer. That's not a personal observation, that's structural. And the compound effect is why, after you've been operating solo long enough, the business can start to feel simultaneously busy and stalled. Here's what actually interrupts this pattern. Not a new productivity system, not better habits, not trying harder at the things that are already difficult. What interrupts it is introducing external friction into the specific processes where it's currently missing. One thinking partner for decisions. One peer relationship with enough context to push back on ideas. One structure, even a lightweight one, that puts your strategic assumptions in front of someone whose job is not to agree with you. The honest version of this is, none of these signs means the path was wrong. Every one of them is a predictable consequence of operating without the specific inputs the decision quality, creativity, strategy, relationships, and planning all depend on. The path wasn't a mistake. The operating conditions need adjustment. And the adjustment doesn't require giving up independence. It requires building the one structural element that independence quietly removed. If you want a starting point that doesn't require finding a thinking partner first, the Solo Operator's Thinking Kit in the description is built exactly for this gap. Which of these 5 signs showed up first for you? And how long did it take before you connected it to operating alone? What you've been calling a decision problem, a creativity problem, a motivation problem, is more likely a structural problem. You've been asking one operating system to do the work that judgment, creativity, and strategy have always needed at least one external input to do well. That doesn't make you less capable. It makes you someone operating in conditions that were never designed for this. The 5 signs in this video are not a verdict on the path. They're a diagnostic on the conditions. And here's the thing about conditions. They can be changed without changing the direction. You don't have to build a team. You don't have to surrender independence. You don't have to become someone who operates differently at the fundamental level. You have to introduce the specific external friction that your decision quality, your creativity, your strategy, your relationships, and your planning have been running without. That's a structural fix. And structural fixes don't require you to be different, they require you to be deliberate. The question isn't whether you need people. It's what specific kind of input fits the way you've chosen to work. That's a question worth taking seriously. And now you have the diagnostic to know exactly where to start, one move at a time.